Man, last month, like, it was all editing, Long Walk, Short Drink episodes, and finishing it so I could watch the movie. Like, I was living, breathing, like, all the time at a certain point for like a week and a half. Just it, constantly.
Oh man. Well, without further ado, let's get this King Corner started, huh?
Yeah.
With a little psh.
Honey, come on over here, sugar buns. This machine just called me an asshole.
So I have to ask first. So let's bat before we jump into the movie.
Oh yeah, we never talked about the book. Yeah.
Yeah, you finished the book.
I did.
So now we had a text conversation. I may have alluded to it, but I definitely know I did not spoil it. First, let's do this. Overall impression of the book. I know you do not have a ton of King under your belt yet, but I do feel like when I will go through it is definitely another level of his writing. It's just a slightly above, I feel like, everything else that he has. It's very well done. Does that stand out to you at all? Like,
being like his kind of best work or whatever?
That, or just like, it's definitely on another level compared to the other stuff that you've consumed of his. It's hard because you have like The Shining and The Stand in there, which both of those are epic.
Yeah. When so much of his early work is the iconic, like the really like stuff that embedded in the cultural consciousness. I mean, it definitely it came with so much sort of fanfare in a way, and hearing from you that people feel like it was his most sort of fully realized. It was a kind of an apex of at least a certain part of his career.
Yeah.
I feel like it definitely lived up to that. Like The Stand lived up to being The Stand, and The Shining, all of his stuff like that has lived up to what kind of the reputation of it. It did incorporate a lot of things, those familiar things about, like, at a certain point, or like with the way that Mike is kind of a recording of things. Like, it's almost like a newspaper type, and the way that, like, Carrie or Salem's Lot, or I don't know if he does it in Salem's Lot, or if it's just, I think of that because that's how a device in Dracula, which I know Salem's Lot was influenced by. I almost wonder.
You're talking about like the media, like the
media thing. He doesn't carry
that mixed media portion, right? Where it's Mike talking, doing interviews. That, like, it's either him interviewing somebody or it's like a collection of newspaper clippings or something like that that they do multiple times throughout the book. Yeah.
I was just trying to think, like, for people, like, just so that I know this is ridiculous.
I just like the sense that he tells because the main story is about the kids, like, when they were kids.
Yes.
But when you're going through the book, those sections are all flashbacks. It's almost like the present time is just the catalyst to tell the story through flashbacks.
Yeah.
You're constantly being torn away from the adult portion, which is the quote unquote present, to go back to when they were kids. But that's where the bulk of the story is. The bulk of the book takes place.
Yeah.
In that, and I thought that was just really smart and really well done. What did you think about? And I know we've talked about this off of episodes, but I just want to make sure we get it in episodes. Like, is it Steven Weber? Is that his name?
Yeah, Steven Weber. Yeah.
As a narrator, like, fantastic, right?
Oh yeah,
like,
a tour de force. Like, he acted those parts of all of the kids, all of the characters, the sort of dramatic tension and release. in a way I've never heard so dynamically presented in an audiobook. It was breathtaking. Like it was on, like, for sure. Listen, people, if you're hearing me, if you're curious, I think our sponsorship is going to run out at the end of October. So go to audibletrial.com/LWSD pod to get your free audiobook from Audible.
Just LWSD.
Oh, sorry.
Pod, right?
Yes, audibletrial.com/LWSD. Thank you. LWSD. And get that fucking by Stephen.
And that's a good value too, because it's a really long audiobook.
Jesus, yeah.
And you're getting it like it's a super long audiobook that you'd be getting for free, and it's Steven Weber reading it, which it's just like it's one of those. I love Frank Muller and I love George Guidall as narrators, audiobook narrators. But you do run into other audiobooks, like you guys said.
Blood Meridian is amazing. It's amazing in a different way. Richard Poe's reading of Blood Meridian is excellent. Also, audibletrial.com. Try to milk this, but do yourself a favor on those two for sure.
Yeah, this guy, like, I think about. So the hate crime that occurs at the beginning.
Wait, before we get into it too much, because there's people who are going to hear this, they're never going to listen to it, etc. Let's just give them like a brief, like, this is what the book is about.
This is what it is.
Yeah, okay. Like a shortest synopsis.
I guess we should even back up on that a little bit. Like spoilers.
Oh, yeah. We're going to spoil everything.
If you're a person that is turned off by spoilers, or you think you're going to read these books or see this movie at any point in time. I mean, our number one fan is Double D.
I was just thinking, like, let's just build this for him. Let's just spoil it for him.
We ever see this movie. Like, I already told it when we were talking on Monday. I was like, I can spoil the fuck out of this movie for you because I know you're never going to see it. He's like,
exactly.
Nope. He's like, tell me whatever you want.
Yeah.
And
that's how we should approach it.
I couldn't talk to you about it. So I was like trying to talk to it. Like, I took Stan the Man. Like, we went and saw it after I went and saw it on IMAX. We went the next night. He was down here in Dayton.
I'm so excited
for some event
to talk about
like
this.
So he was like, I asked him, I was like, have you seen it yet? He's like, no. And then we went and I saw it 2 nights back to back.
Oh, that's so great.
I saw it Wednesday and Thursday last week back to back. And then I saw it the Wednesday prior to that when we had recorded the double shot. So
that's right. Yeah.
So just so you know, like, spoilers from moving forward, we've already given some spoilers, but like, we're going to spoil the fuck out of the book and the movie right now. So, and starting now with the synopsis. So the synopsis, basically, the gist of the book is this group of adults. The book starts out with this group of adults being, I know there's other things that happen at the beginning, but the gist of the story is these adults get this call from a you find out is a childhood friend who also obviously is an adult, telling them it's back and you need to come home.
Yeah. Remember your promise. They all made promises as a kid.
Yeah. And that is enough that starts jarring their memory.
They don't remember what happened to them as a kid, but they know this promise is important.
Yeah, and that they have to go back and
to the small town where they're from. Let's just keep tag teaming.
Yeah, and that's fine. And one of them, even though he doesn't know what it is, one of them even is so jarred by this random call, that he hangs up the call and goes and commits suicide.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to go back and face it.
Because he doesn't want to have to go back and face this. And so what it is there is an entity. I don't want to get technical about it.
Yeah, I think maybe he's just setting out that first scene that's presented in the adaptations and an early scene in the book, where it's like at the beginning there's this kid, Bill Denborough and his little brother Georgie. Bill is sick and it's been raining.
And Georgie and he's making a toy boat for
like a newspaper.
Georgie, like an origami boat. And Georgie goes out it's raining because there's a major flooding going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And rain in the town. and Georgie sails the boat down I mean, in the It trailer that we've tweeted out before, this is in there. It goes down the gutters. It's going down, and then it goes down in the storm drain. Georgie wants to get the boat back, and ends up meeting the antagonist.
Like the boat goes into the drain. Kid's like, oh fuck, and
it's
then
lost.
This clown face pops up in the drain and starts talking to him.
And that happens in the book. That happens in the miniseries adaptation. It happens in the movie adaptation.
Yeah,
it's
so iconic.
It's like an iconic scene, right? And there is a clown in the storm drain that ends up killing Georgie.
Yeah, he's like, come on down here. And actually, even the cover of the book is like that drain with that boat and then a little claw, which we'll get into later. But so yeah, he pulls Georgie's arm off and Georgie dies. And then we start to follow Bill Denborough, Georgie's brother, and his kind of group of friends, all of whom they get dubbed the Losers Club. Bill has a stutter. He's got a friend.
There's a stutterer, a Jew, a hypochondriac, a fat kid, a black kid, a slutty poor girl.
I have to come back to that one. That classification of her is very interesting to me, and I have thoughts or
poor. Because I'm taking the movie, but in the book she's just poor.
Yeah, or she's just the girl. I was just a thought of her. I had heard you say that, and I kept waiting for the reveal of why you said those things, and eventually I understood. But really, she's just the girl. I mean, they're all kind of poor or whatever in some respect, or not necessarily poor, but they're all
so
misfits.
Why does she end up being in the Losers Club? That's what I don't understand. Because she smokes, like there's that, and she's just kind of
that's a good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
how did she? Yeah, that's a good point.
Because they all have this like thing that makes them a quote unquote loser, and really all they are, this is my bread and butter. I think this is why I like it so much. The book. Mm-hmm. I think this is why I like the It movie so much. It's Monster Squad, Goonies.
Yeah. It's fucking Cabin Kids with monsters, really.
With monsters. It's just like, it's an entourage of all these amazing personalities that you would not think would get along that just do.
Yeah.
And then it makes this, and then they go on an adventure.
Yep.
And so,
and just to set it up a little bit more, like we get that cast of characters, they all encounter this evil force, like that's represented by the clown or whatever. When they see it, when it's revealed to them as kids, it's always in what frightens them. So it takes many different shapes. Eventually,
Pennywise is if he chooses.
Yeah.
To be seen.
Pennywise the clown. Yeah, that's what he'll identify as sometimes.
Or Bob Gray.
Oh yeah.
But if he's gonna scare you, like if he's getting ready to eat you, it will be what you fear the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
And children, he preys on children because their fears are easier to articulate.
Yeah, and they're so fully realized. I think, it's like you really you visualize those things so clearly as a kid, and you're not quick to disbelieve stuff.
Yeah, like one of the kids is scared of the old sci-fi, because the kids portion takes place in 1958, and the adult portion in the book takes place in the mid 80s.
Yeah,
and this gets confusing because then the newest movie adaptation that just came out in 2017 takes place in the mid 80s, and the adult portion is going to take place in 2015 or 16.
Oh, right, yeah.
So it gets a little confusing, but so in the book though, they're in 1958. So if you've ever seen that like crazy sci-fi monster movie where it's the giant eye, one of them had seen that and it really scared them. And it takes that form at one point, like where it's the giant eyeball.
Yeah. Right.
And it's just, the concept is amazing.
Right. Yeah.
And, so good.
And I'm just trying to like zoom through everything people might need to know before we can get into it. And so like at some point they all kind of admit to each other that they've seen this supernatural element. They realize that it is what killed Georgie, and that's, Bill is their kind of, leader. That's more pronounced in some of the adaptations than I felt it was at times in the book, but they all kind of band together.
They say that in the book in a few times. They say like Bill was our leader.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I feel maybe like the time spent on the kid is more balanced in the book than then it ends up being adaptations for
That's
completely
fair.
understandable reasons. But in any event, that's part of the catalyst where they realize like the adults can't see these, the adults don't see the effects of it, but there is an epidemic in the community where kids are being killed. The adults just think it's something else. So they realize that they're uniquely positioned to stop this thing. And in the 50s, they do kind of like, they don't completely kill it, I guess is the best, maybe. I don't know. That's a little.
They think they do, but they say just in case, so they make that promise.
Yeah, and then they all like cut their hands and bind
they
their
make like
blood.
a blood oath that they'll all come back if it ever comes back again.
Yep.
And then that's
really then how the book
when they're
starts.
adults. Yeah, that's how the book starts. And so is them getting that call that it has started again.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you find out that through all this, through the exposition, you find out that there's a history in this town of Derry that these horrific things happen approximately. In the book, it's more approximate. In the movie, they kind of hardline it at 27 years. But in the book, it's like approximate every 27 years. These things start to happen. And I feel like in the newest adaptation, I won't speak on the miniseries, and in the book, though, it's not like while Pennywise doesn't go after, I like saying Pennywise just because just constantly saying it, they get to the point in the book where they refer to it as capital IT, like
and then they call it, and it makes a lot of sense because it's so many different things. Like yeah,
and
but yeah, we can call it Pennywise. I might call it, but
no, you can call it too. It gets confusing in my head sometimes, but it just. They do this in the, what was I getting ready to say? Shit, I haven't even eaten any cake, and
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we laid out the story. I know you've had some questions.
Yeah.
In short, I really fucking loved it, and I love kind of I love both adaptations, though the miniseries is definitely very dated. So yeah, I've got tons we can talk about.
So, all right, so. Well, let's wrap up the Peter Weber stuff.
Oh, Steven Weber, yeah. It's not like I'm a Steven Weber fan, like he doesn't like play guys in movies that I like,
Yeah.
I recently watched him or saw him in House of Lies with Don Cheadle and I'm blanking on her name, Veronica Mars. Fuck.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I don't know.
I don't know why I can't think of her name. Kristen Bell. Yeah. That's a fantastic show, by the way. House of Lies, not to be confused with House of Cards. That's a really fun half hour, like really smart, great show. Anyway, Steven Weber's in it, playing a dick. So like, I don't like this. I've never liked this guy in Wings, anything. Like he's not a guy that I think of fondly. Right. But I do now because, man, like he brought that book to life in a way I've never heard any book really brought to life in terms of like he's a one-man fucking radio drama. It's amazing.
Yeah. When you get to especially the Frank Muller stuff.
Yeah, I've not heard any Frank Muller or the other guy you like so much.
George Guidall. Because both of those, George Guidall is more like a narrator. He does voices, but he's got. The reason I like him so much is he sounds like the In a World guy. Like he sounds like the trailer guy. He's just got this awesome voice. But Frank Muller, I think this guy was like the inspiration for all of these really great audiobooks because he really performs them. And man, like I think back to there's like two or three really good characters that Steven Weber does in the reading of it that just really stand out to me. So,
which ones? I'm dying to know now.
So the homosexual at the beginning, the surviving homosexual, when he's doing the interrogation with the cops, and he is heartbroken because his lover just got killed. Like you feel that empathy. Like you feel like, or you empathize with that. Like he tugs at your heartstrings. Like it sounds like he had been crying for hours when he reads that, and really lays out like how terrible Derry is. And that was one piece that I feel like the book didn't do as well as it wasn't as effective in the book as it was in the adaptations. That Pennywise also the it entity also really it does impact the adults. It turns their head the other way to these horrific things happening to children.
I don't know if I don't know that I put that part together. I understand that now, because there are times in the book. So one of the elements of the book we didn't mention is that the kids are menaced by the supernatural force, but they are also all preyed upon by one bully in particular.
Bully.
Yeah,
like
Henry Bowers is his name.
An evil bully, like a bad bully.
Yeah, like he starts out as kind of like a bully, but he over the course of this one summer evolves into like a full-blown psychopath, like trying to kill them.
And I would even argue he was a psychopath even at the beginning. Like one of the first instances that you read about him bullying, he's trying to cut his name into the stomach of a
true.
chuck.
Yeah.
Back, with a knife. So, So I'm sorry. So, but those.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like it's such a big book. We're kind of all over the place. How to start? Well, I think that's interesting. You were telling about your favorite characterization. So the book opens in the present with a fucking hate crime against the gay guys. So, unfortunately,
when Steven Weber does that scene. The scene when Bev is an adult and goes back to her house and sits down with that woman.
Oh, yeah.
Like to drink coffee with that woman and then slowly reveals that it's actually Pennywise through that whole thing. and he's like, and my father shat me out of his like.
Oh, like, yeah. It's so fucked up. Yeah.
And it's
my
so fucked up what she's saying. And, like,
and
you're like, how is this the same fucking guy that just like was
Bev? Yeah, the girl in the Losers Club. Grown up. Yeah, he does the kids obviously as kids and then grown up, and
he does such a great job. And like, but you can still hear those little kid like them as kids in the adult voices, and and all of them have a distinct voice, so you know what character. Like you don't even need the Bev said, and because you know what character it is based on him changing his voice. It's just great. But then the Pennywise affecting the adults.
Oh wait, what's your third favorite characterization?
What one was it? What one was it?
Those are two that surprised me. I mean, they're not main like characters really. It's like
no, but they're just like really good scenes that like stand out. I guess Henry Bowers. Any of the Henry Bowers stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He's just like...
Oh, yeah. He does that thing where, like, with the Henry Bowers when he's, like, really vitriolic, like, fucking this, or... Actually, no, I'm thinking of, like, Beverly's abusive husband. It's like, when he gets really angry, it's palpable.
He nails it. Yeah.
It's
crazy. Like...
He can seethe really well.
And, when I'm thinking about the Henry Bowers, like, when he reads the Henry Bowers stuff... Any of the times that Henry Bowers is tormenting Mike, it's like it's already uncomfortable. Mike is he's the black kid.
Yeah.
And he's the only black kid in town. And his family, Mike's family, Henry Bowers' dad thinks that Mike's family like did wrong by them. So that makes Henry hate him even more. And it's already uncomfortable, again, because King doesn't pull any punches,
No.
Which they completely omitted this part, the racial portion of it.
Yeah, in the movie.
Out of the adaptation.
It's super brutal, like, because so the 50s stuff, or the kid stuff in the book, it's the 50s. And that's the thing with King, too. Like, when we say he doesn't pull any punches, it's like he's trying to show the representations of like evil and stuff. And so he's not going to like pussyfoot around it. Like he's going to, as you say, rub your nose in it. So there's like the racial sort of like the N-bombs in this book are innumerable.
That's how he like catches Mike's attention one time, like where Henry Bowers like ambushes Mike right before Mike like finally meets the Losers Club.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Henry Bowers gets his attention. He scares him and he's like, Edward.
Yeah,
like says that over and over and over again. And you're just like, oh, it's so uncomfortable. And then Steven Weber, so that's what I mean. Like that kind of stuff when he's reading the Henry Bauer stuff like that. And yeah, that vitriol is like, you can hear it in the back of his throat. He's just like, and you're just like, oh.
Yeah, his intensity and commitment to those characters. Yeah. I was trying to think what my favorites were, and I'm not sure I could tell you. I think it's more cumulative for me. So it was really cool that you could pull those out.
They just really stuck with me when you're listening to that book. And I mean, I've listened to that probably 3 or 4 times. So there's that too. But yeah, man, is it good. So there's the book. So,
and obviously we'll contrast the book and the film, and I actually did watch the miniseries, so I'll be able to speak to that as well.
Yeah, and I'll try to remember. As far as the miniseries goes, of course, Steve Curry's
or Tim Curry.
Tim Curry. Yeah. Jesus, what the hell is wrong with me tonight?
There's a lot of names. There's a lot of characters in this book too.
Yeah, Tim Curry that was my biggest apprehension to this new movie was, even if I didn't holistically like the miniseries, that's true. I do not like the miniseries as a whole. I love some of the performances though in that miniseries.
Yeah.
Like the guy from Night Court who plays Trash Mouth.
Yeah,
Dozer.
Harry Anderson. So one of the characters. Which one of the characters? A lot of people have these maladies. What is Richie's thing? Is his less a malady and more he's just a motor mouth?
Well, and he's got glasses.
Oh, that's right. He's got these thick glasses. Yeah. Richie is far and away one of my favorite characters. Like beep beep Richie. Like to hear, almost for me to say beep beep Richie, I start to choke up. Like I have such an affection for these kids. I can't even tell you, in the film, not to derail us too much. Sorry, I don't know where to start or how to move
this
around.
Is long walk short drink. We got all the time in the world, dude.
I mean, so these kids you come to know so well through the book that I burned through the book audiobook to be able to go to the movie in the theater. And when I saw the movie in the theater, I went with the bride, and she's not familiar with any of this stuff, and she had a general idea of what it is, I guess. And of course the movie, maybe not of course, depending on your knowledge of all this, but the movie that just came out in 2017 is only the kid portion. And the film sets the kid portion, instead of being in the 50s, it kind of retro dates it for things coming out now. So it's the 80s in the film that's in theaters. And, I guess there will be a sequel that is the present day, of I think in 2015,
which is
or
2016, 27 years after 1989.
Oh,
right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So these kids, you learn so much about them in this. I've got my book right here, and it's how many pages? It is 1,138 pages.
Yeah,
it's a big motherfucker, man, and it's a
thick one. Yep,
that's what she said. And not to me, but whatever. So you get to know these kids so well, both as children and as adults. You literally somehow grow up with them in the space between. So for me, and part of what's unfolded in the book is certain members of the Losers Club knew each other. Like Bill Denbrough, the kid who stutters, he already knows Richie Tozier, who loves to do impersonations and voices, and he has got these thick glasses.
And he gets himself in trouble with his fucking
mouth. He runs his mouth.
The beep beep is where the Losers Club, if he takes a joke too far, that's how they can shut him up. Like beep beep Richie, and that makes him.
Exactly, it's and it's. I'll get back to it, but I think some of it resonated with me because of my experience with the cabin and cabin kids. Yeah. For us, with that, we were, 18, 19, whatever. But these kids were what are they 10, 11, a little even younger?
I would say, yeah.
In the 50s when they're all
middle school. They're middle school age.
I didn't quite put it at that, but yeah. Oh, no. Or early middle school, late grade school.
Fifth grade going into 6th grade, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think that
sounds right. Yeah. And so like some of these kids know each other. You know, Georgie died. Bill is already friends with Richie, Trash Mouth. He runs his mouth, Big Glass, and Stan Urich, I think. And Stan is the hypochondriac.
Stan
Uris, sorry, yeah.
Oh no, Stan Uris is the Jew. The hypochondriac is Eddie Kasprak.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, yes.
So he's friends with those three. That is the start of the Losers Club.
And they hang out in this place called the Barrens, which is kind of like, it's the opposite of Barrens. It's a lot of different like trees and brush and and it kind of verges on the sewer, right, or something like that.
Yeah, there's a there's a canal that runs through the middle of Derry that ultimately dumps into a creek, and the Knopscott, I think, is the name of the creek.
Ooh, well done. That sounds right. That's impressive.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And that creek runs through the Barrens, which all of those things are fed by, pass through the Derry sewer system also. Yeah. So there's a lot of these, Derry had a flood. That's one of the, we forgot to say too. So like, it is on a cycle. Pennywise is on a cycle. He comes every 27 years. He ends that, like the year leading up through that cycle is just him killing kids, like major disappearances. And then he ends every cycle with like a major catastrophe in Derry.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So there was a flood at one point in time. That's why the Barrens exist, was because at the end of one of his cycles, he had flooded Derry. So then they came through and like put all the standpipes, or what they call them, but they're basically just like storm drains for the Barrens, so that the flooding starts to get so high it just dumps the stuff back into the sewer. But yeah, so they're down in the Barrens, and he's with those. It's the three of that, or the four of them, is essentially at the start of the summer. That's the other thing too, is like the kid portion. The very beginning of that is the last day of school. Yeah. So it all takes place over a summer.
Yes.
And in all the adaptations and the book, that's how the kid portion goes.
Yeah.
It all happens over a summer. And
so we're introduced to like Bill in that world, or at least Bill by way of the death of Georgie, his little brother. And then it kind of fast forwards like a few months. I think that was like in the fall or something, and then by the summer,
it's the year before, the fall, and then by the summer. And it's not a full year, but it is the fall.
Yeah, and almost like that's like the disaster leading into like, or no, that's when the kids start getting killed with Georgie in that cycle. Yeah. But then we're introduced to a new character of Ben Hapscomb. Am I saying that right? Hanscom. And he's like a heavyset kid that, did he move, or is that just in the adaptations?
No, I think he moved too, because it's a single mom.
Okay.
And she moves with work. So they move a lot.
Yes.
You know, because before the next school year starts, they had moved again for work, right? Like or something like that. And then that ended up being the final. I love too, because you said like we grow up with these kids. We get this really rich, but again, it's just really one summer, but we get this really rich insight to their childhood. And then we get to see them as adults. But then there's a huge portion of the book that's devoted to them as adults, saying what happened between this summer and now. Yeah. And them telling their individual stories of what happened to them after they defeated it, and how they got to where they are now. And you find out that all of the people who left Derry were successful, majorly successful.
Inordinately successful. Like Richie with his voices has become, in the book, he's a famous radio disc jockey. Bill has grown up to be kind of an author. Yeah, there's always in these Stephen King things like a Stephen King proxy, right?
Right, what you know. You write what you know, right?
And who else do we? Designer, I was trying to think who we know yet. I was thinking we should introduce the kids so that people can get a sense of who the kids are. Obviously, we're not going to go beat for beat for the story, but well, so like Eddie Kasprak is the hypochondriac, right? So he's got an overbearing mother. He's grown up to marry sort of a version of that. Like he's got an overbearing wife who's equally protective of his, and sort of fearful of his well-being in the world constantly. And he owns like a successful limousine company that drives around
because he
movie
has
stars.
a flawless sense of direction, which
that's
see
right.
as a kid. Yeah, like that. That's how that equated to that.
At some point, we're gonna have to map Cabin Kids to these archetypes.
Well, I mean, I'm Ben Hanscom. I mean, I'm the fat kid. That's who I relate to, and that's why. Here's my theory on why this this group of kid thing is such a popular genre. Is because there's always one that you can relate to.
Yeah.
If you make an ensemble cast like this, like where they're like. You got one black kid, you got one Jew, you got one four-eyed kid with a big mouth, you got a stutterer, you got a poor girl, you got a fat kid. You pretty much covered it. Like somebody's going to be really able to relate to one of those kids. And then luckily in the book, all of them get equal treatment almost. Like they all get this, all of their stories get flushed out equally. In the movie, that's my one of my major complaints about the movie adaptation is like Mike totally gets thrown. His story gets gutted.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
Stan's story pretty much gets gutted, but I feel like they did better setting Stan up in the book or in the current adaptation than in the book. He's just the one that's not there, because he's the one that commits suicide.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're like in the adult portion, the only reference to Stan that gets made is that he's not there. And then as a kid, he is referred, like you hear how Pennywise like traumatized him, like how he quote, all of them are almost hunted and killed by Pennywise
I never really put it together like that. I always just thought of like as some kind of exposition how the kids knew stuff. But now that you mention it, obviously they all just narrowly escaped being killed by Pennywise.
Right.
Yeah. And there's this whole thing where ultimately they realize that as a group, they can stand against this thing.
Yes.
And so just to round out the group, and I definitely want to get obviously back to what you're saying. We are introduced on the last day of school to Ben Hanscom, who is he's a new transplant to the town. He's a heavy kid who's picked on by Henry Bowers. He's got a crush on this girl, Beverly Marsh, and he writes her this poem. I might have it memorized. What is it like? No, I don't. Your hair is winter fire.
Your hair is winter fire.
My heart, January embers.
January embers. My heart burns there too.
Yeah, and so he writes that. Yeah,
they leave that out. Like this is like you lose so much exposition in a movie. But like I love how he talks about how like they learned about haikus and how he really liked haikus and so he wanted to write her a haiku and they just don't have time for that in the movie. I told Stan the Man I want to make sure that this popped into my head so I just don't want to forget it.
Sure, yeah.
But I feel like the book is amazing and the movie was amazing. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think so too.
But the movie did a great job at taking the essence of it and making a good movie out of it.
Yeah.
Like
I was just thinking of that same word, the essence of.
Yeah,
of the story, not so much it.
Essence of the story. Oh yeah, I guess
they do a good job at that, I think, as well. But the story, especially the kid dynamic.
Yeah, they pull that great, like it's the vibe of the story as a really good movie, whereas as a book, it's a really good book. Mm-hmm. They're drastically different in a lot of ways, but it works as a movie. The 2017 adaptation works as a movie, and the book works as a book, and they just both happen to be about the same story. You know? They're just told in different ways. So, which is exactly what an adaptation should be. Like, just
it's like Cronenberg said about Dead Zone. He's like, that's when I learned that to faithfully adapt a book, you have to betray the book in some way.
Yeah. And so, and they just really nailed it. I mean, God, did they fucking nail it? The miniseries is proof on why you can't directly adapt the book.
It's a good example of, so like recently I briefly mentioned the Firestarter adaptation. which is super literal. Probably one of the more literal ones I've seen. And I don't feel like it doesn't work necessarily or anything, but and so it's nice to see unfolded. That's the thing I think about the miniseries that I appreciated, is that it was just nice to see there was so many beat for the book. You know, it was like they had the same structure of the book in the 1990 miniseries, where you're introduced to the, I don't know exactly where. I think they do start in the past or something, but they have that back and forth between the adult present and the kid past, and they kind of go through the entire book in that way, in a very condensed way. Whereas I think it was a great move on the part of the people that are producing this new movie that we talked about. Like, they didn't consult King or anything like that, because they didn't want to like justify their decisions. But to make that separation, it makes great business sense too, because they're going to get to market 2 different movies. But rather than have it just be like the final part of the Harry Potter series, you know, part 1 and 2, or the final fucking Twilight, you know, that's like a thing you do now. You break up the last book,
last one, and as many.
This is a much better way to go about it, and conveniently so, because that book is split into the present and the past like that. But so the last day of school, though, I just want to be, hopefully for people who don't check this out, can somehow understand our investment in these characters, just so that we can refer to them by shorthand. So we meet Ben Hanscom. He likes this girl Beverly Marsh, but he's also like, he's in trouble with this Henry Bowers kid bully. And on that last day of school, like, Henry Bowers is pissed at him because, like, I think Henry Bowers has to go to summer school on account of,
because Ben wouldn't let him cheat.
Yeah. So it's not really Ben's fault, but in Henry's mind.
Right.
So they corner him, and like on this, I love that it's seen in the movie too, because it's like the kissing bridge. It's a great little like, this bridge is made for kissing, and carving like names into the bridge. Is that in the book? I don't know if it is, but
it's just really graffitied. The kissing bridge is really graffitied, because they talk about how the graffiti, if you stare at it long enough, you start to see really disturbing things in the graffiti, like normal shit initially, but the more you look at it, the more like dark some of the graffiti is.
Yes,
you know. Anyways, so it's made for kissing and it's made for carving.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was, I didn't remember that from the book, but that was a great extrapolation in the movie, where then he's like, because what happens in both is that Henry starts to carve his name in the stomach of Ben Hanscom, and Ben, like, in a moment of whatever, like, he gets his senses and he's able to like kind of use his weight to push back over the bridge, and he falls into the Barrens. Henry and
which is the gully. Like, the Barrens are down at the bottom of a gully.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So Henry and his his friends like chase him, and eventually Ben runs into to Bill and Richie and Ed's and
which
Stan.
I think they were really faithful in the movie to how it happens in the book.
Yeah,
like, they're
miniseries too. Like, those scenes were pretty like note for note for the book.
That all happens, and then the existing losers, which is Stan, Bill, Trashmouth Tozier, Richie Tozier, and Stan Uris.
And did you get Eddie Kasparek? And Eddie's got asthma, or so he thinks, or whatever. He has an Asperger, he has to use.
Yeah, and it's the 4 of them doing Losers Club shit.
Yeah.
And then just out of nowhere, Ben Hanscom is
this kid comes like running for his life.
Running for his life. Like, literally running for his life. And they end up making friends.
Yeah, they just instantly accept him and protect him. And and Ben has no friends, and suddenly he's got this whole. They're just like, they start to like build a dam, or they were building a dam or something, and then they decide Ben knows about this kind of shit, so he comes back and helps them, and they're that instant acceptance is so moving. How does Beverly come to hang out with them? The girl,
Trashmouth. They go to the movies.
Like,
she has cigarettes. Like, Richie,
Richie wants cigarettes. Yeah, and Ben has cigarettes.
And Ben, of course, is smitten with her already.
Yeah.
So then they in the book, I think they just invite her down to the Barrens. They don't go swimming. I love the way the movie does it way better. I think not way better, but it's just as effective in the movie. How they like
in the movie
swimming.
she comes down to the Barrens and like they're in their underwear and she's in her underwear and that's like, holy shit, that's a girl.
Yeah. And they're debating on jumping into this quarry. And this is why aside from all the child murders, this is why this movie needed to be R-rated. It's because the Losers Club is the boys of the Losers Club is debating on who's going to jump in first to this quarry. And Bev shows up and she's like, I'll go first. And they don't even know she's there. She just like rides up on her bike, takes off her dress, gets down to her underwear, and like runs right past them and jumps into the quarry. And it's all that happens in slow motion, her jumping. But as it's in slow motion, you hear Richie Tozier, who's played by Wolf.
Oh, he's the kid from Stranger Things. Yeah.
The guy from Stranger Things, the kid from Stranger Things.
He's like Wolf DeHart. It's some kind of crazy fucked up name. It's like, I want to know now. It is like, it's ridiculous.
But he plays Trashmouth Tozier.
Sorry, Finn Wolfhard is his name.
Yeah, thank you. Finn Wolfhard.
Wolf. Little Teen Wolf action there.
But she jumps and that goes in slow motion, but you hear in real time Trashmouth go, what the fuck?
Yes. Like, I love that so much about the movie. The kids curse all the time.
They curse all the time. They curse all the time in the book.
Yeah.
They curse all the time in the movie. That's why it needed to be R-rated, not because of they could have done the kid killing and kept it PG-13, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, they made a fucking miniseries of it in 1990.
Yeah, exactly. But
ABC.
Like the swearing, man, I'm so like the first he's like when they're all dumping their books out in the trash and he's in like Eddie's like, oh, that's such a good feeling. And like Trashmouth's like, oh yeah, you should pull your pickle for the first time. Like,
yeah. The bride was like, she didn't like seeing that character in his non-Stranger Things role, but he was such a good Richie for me.
Man, he nailed it.
He was so good. Yeah. All of those kids were really great.
They were. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna finish the round out so that's where Beverly comes into play, and there's a little bit of Ben likes Beverly. He sends her that poem anonymously and stuff. Beverly kind of takes a liking to Bill, who's kind of their leader, the stutterer, and there's a little bit of a triangle thing, but they're fucking kids, like they are in 5th grade. So
it's a triangle. We say it's a triangle. It's not a triangle because she likes Bill. Bill's completely oblivious. He only wants to find this fucking thing and kill it.
Yeah.
He's not trying to look for anything. And Ben has a crush on her. I mean, right. I can't think of anybody who hasn't been in that kind of situation. You like somebody who likes somebody else who doesn't give a shit about any of them.
And Ben's whole attitude is not
you know what I mean? Like,
Ben's not pissed at Bill or anything. He's just like, well, that makes sense. Or something I don't know.
In the movie, they made that triangle way more, I guess that would be another critique maybe, is that they made Bill like her back. But in the book, there's none of that. It's not.
Yeah. That's I agree completely, and not just with the Bill thing, but in the sexualizing of Beverly up until a fucking point of the book. Like they are. I just pictured them all. Like even in the movie, all of those kids are just like so. Not baby face, but like they just look like little kids. And as much as I think that the actress who played Beverly was great, she seemed older. Like she seemed old enough to have adults look at her kind of sideways and stuff.
But I think that's the point, though.
But is that how you pictured her in the book, or because I always just pictured her much more as a little kid.
Like it's a totally different time, though, too, that the book is taking place. Like it takes place in the 50s, and the movie took place in the 80s. Beverly's fear is becoming a woman. Like I
didn't quite pick up on that in the book, but I thought they made great use of that in the movies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why the blood, like that's why the first
I didn't pick up on that.
Blood is because the period. She's scared of her period. You know, like and I think that she's scared of it just in the sense that she knows. In the book, they do a great job of between her and her abusive father. Like she talks about how at one point her mom asks her, because in the book her mom it's like a whole family.
Yeah.
In the movie, it's just her and her dad. But her mom asks her, like, has he ever touched you, Bevy, or anything like that? And Bevy doesn't even know what she's talking about.
Yeah, like she literally doesn't know.
That helps, like, it increase this fear of her becoming a woman. And I think that I don't know, like, oh man.
Yeah, I think that I actually do. It makes sense. Like it took the movie. So there's a scene in the book where Beverly's encounter with it is in her bathroom. She starts to hear like a voice in the drain, because all this stuff tends to hover around the sewers. Like, you know, at the beginning, Pennywise is trying to lure Georgie into the sewers and with the balloons, and we all float down here. That whole thing.
Yep.
But so suddenly, like, blood starts to gush out of the sink, and her father doesn't see it. And I did not put that together in listening to the book. Like, this idea of it being related to her growing up and kind of being recognized as sort of for her sexuality and stuff. So that stuff doesn't make sense it makes sense to me why they did it in the movies. I just wasn't something I picked up on in the book. And so it was a little weird to it makes, the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, all right, that's a good call. But even so, like, I feel like she looks more mature than any of the boys in the film, you know, like it's an older actress true. Or something.
But I think you know, they always say, like, girls mature faster than boys. So she should be a little, like, especially at that age, you know, like.
And there were those girls, right, that were more advanced and stuff. And the bride who I saw it with, I said that, she's like, that is what such and such an age girl could look like. She instantly dismissed my sort of thoughts on it. So so there you go. But I always pictured
and
her
I thought
as
they did better in the movie too, of showing how ruthless it could be to be a girl. Like, it could, like, because in the book, there's no hint at Beverly's sexuality.
No, that's why I picture her as so much of a kid.
Exactly what you said about how, like, you didn't pick up on any of that in the book, but it's there. Like, once you know it's there, though, like, because her dad beats her up and I worry about you.
Yeah, they do talk about this kind of transition, like the tension between them is getting worse. And then there's that thing where he freaks out and he's like, he basically wants to physically examine her to make sure she's still a virgin. It's fucked up.
Fucked up, right?
So many fucked up things about the book. So many like really nice things as well, but it does. Well,
we are barreling towards the sex scene, and I feel like that's what we're headed towards.
I gotta introduce Mike before that. That is too much of an earth-shattering thing.
I know, but that's what my epiphany is about. That might help.
Oh, okay. All right, go. So we have one more character to introduce, but Palmer had an epiphany, and I don't want him to lose it. I got to know what it is.
So the epiphany is, if girls mature faster than boys, and if you notice, Bevy's fear when her interaction with Pennywise, individual interaction with Pennywise, is the blood in the sink. It's on the verge of being a hard to articulate fear for Pennywise. All the other ones.
Oh yeah.
Stan saw a monster.
Yeah.
Eddie saw a monster. Bill saw his dead brother trying to come back at him. Yes. Like, Bevy's is the only one that's kind of like an abstract fear.
Fuck, right? Dude, that is an epiphany. That's really good.
And so because her fear is growing up, is becoming an adult, because I think she knows her relationship with her father is leading towards something that she's not going to like. If she, that's what her dad is waiting for. Are you still my little girl?
Right.
Meaning, are you still a virgin? Because the second I can take that, I'm gonna. Like, that's
fuck.
That's what I think.
Never thought of it like that. Yeah.
You know, and that's why the sex scene happens, because she's the bridge to bring them from childhood to adulthood, to bring them out of Pennywise's influence as children. Because he's still all right. So that's my epiphany. Let's talk about Mike, and then when we get to the sex scene, because we're going to talk about the sex scene, we'll come back to that bridge point. But it's literally like, that's why she's a part of the Losers Club. That's why, that's the role that she's playing, is she's she is there to bridge that gap of maturity from those those boys.
I can see that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So that's a major something where Anyway,
that's
we'll get to it.
Yeah.
There's some fucked up noise I'm hearing. There was coyote. No, nothing to be alarmed at for real. But there's some.
Yeah.
When I saw it, so I'll just tell this real quick because this is it's kind of a non sequitur, but not. So right now I'm taking my headphone off. I'm what am I hearing? Because I got the windows open. I'm on the back porch. And it sounds kind of like a cow, but there are no cows around here. So it's is it some kind of a groan? That's fucked up and disturbing with what we're talking about. Earlier, I heard clearly, which sometimes happens, but it hasn't for a long time, coyotes. Coyotes are close. I made a note in my thing, if I could play it after the credits or something, you can hear these coyotes. It's upsetting.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There's that when I first moved in here and we first got Maggie, our older dog. I'm taking her out for to pee, and I had to pee, and so I step around into the shadows, and I'm just about to go, and I hear it's so close a fucking coyote. I'm okay.
How do you know it's a coyote? What do you hear? What is it? Do they howl or do they?
Yeah, they howl. They howl that I can't quite do it.
Oh, that yipping. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the Teen Wolf howl.
Yeah.
Actually, more specifically, I actually did. This is sort of true. It's the first werewolf howl that I became aware of that I heard is in Teen Wolf, but more accurately, it's in the scene in Teen Wolf where Scott Howard is seduced by the girl that he really likes, Pamela Wells, in her dressing room. She's when you become the wolf, he's well, sometimes it happens when I don't want to. Other times it happens when I get worked up. And she goes, what do you think about to get worked up? And she fucking titty drops it.
Yeah.
He's different things. And then she seduces him. And then it cuts to outside and you hear this. It's this very distinctive, that beat. And later I heard that was a coyote howl, not a wolf howl necessarily. So that's why I associated with that.
Awesome.
Anyway, so what were we talking? Oh, so I'm hearing some fucked up noises. We see the movie, the bride and I. We're driving out. We're talking about it. We're not a minute. We're just pulling out of the movie theater parking lot. There's a gas station kind of nearby, but it's in a sort of remote location. There's a Walmart across the kind of way. It's a little bit like the Fairlawn complex, but with a lot less stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a person walking on the road. It's not exactly a sidewalk, but it's not really a road either. Again, that sort of Montrose Fairlawn thing, but with dramatically less stuff. I can see kind of Aeropostale or something on their maroon sweater, jeans. I think it's a female, but I really can't see a face. I think maybe the hood is up. And it's just making a fucked up noise. Not screaming help me or anything like that, but just screaming in this kind of way, oh shit, that person might be possessed by the devil. It was really upsetting. What? We were both just what the fuck? It was just this as we drove past, we're why? What? And then I'm thinking to myself, I couldn't see a face. It had no face. I was so upset.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's terrifying.
It's not that does not sit well with me. It's been bothering me since I saw it. And I'm sure, there's a few explanations. One, it's a person with a mental illness. Two, I guess it's a person possibly having an argument on the phone, but I don't think. Or three, she is possessed by Satan.
Listen, I think sometimes sometimes you just have to have a supernatural explanation for something. If that's just what it feels like, that's just what it is,
It was not good, and I'm hoping I'm not hearing anything like that tonight. Yeah. So anyway, that was an aside. So I want to introduce us to our last character so we can really speak freely about everything in the book. So our last major character.
Why's the black guy got to be last, Dave?
I know, yeah. He is the last one we get to know, and I'm trying to think what it was. I don't want to, because I feel it was another incident like the carving skit. It was another traumatic incident, but I can't quite remember.
It's the rock fight.
Yeah. Oh, you set it up because that's maybe I want to jump into the film.
So Mike's family, Mike does not go to school with the rest of the kids. He's homeschooled.
Oh, see, I missed that.
Yeah,
that's
what they say in the movie. I think that's the case in the book too. He's homeschooled or he goes to a different school or whatever. But so Henry Bowers hates all of the losers. He's after all of the losers in some way. And so Henry Bowers has an alcoholic, abusive father in every adaptation and the book.
Yeah, like Henry Bowers is made into a monster by his father.
By his father.
Yeah.
And who's crazy and an alcoholic. In the movie, he happens to also be a deputy, like
I forgot about that. Yeah.
But in the movie, he's just like a poor, broken farmer who went to World War II.
Oh, yeah.
Came back and just couldn't hold it together.
He was just like broken by that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's got a vendetta against Mike's family.
Because they're black.
Right. I thought there was something else, but actually you're right. Yeah.
What happened was, Henry Bowers' dad slaughtered all of Mike's chickens.
Oh yeah.
And Mike called the sheriff out, and the sheriff just happened to the sheriff of Derry at the time happened to have been ballsy enough to support Mike's dad.
Yeah.
Even though he was black, and made Henry Bowers' dad pay back for the chickens. Well, then that just ramped up. After that, it just kept ramping up. And then finally, Mike's dad cornered Henry Bowers' dad and stuck a shotgun to his face and said, "You better knock it off or else I'm going to fucking kill you." And Henry Bowers' dad, you see his true colors, like breaks down and is crying and begging for his life, but always has this vendetta. Well, Henry Bowers, abusive relationships are fucked up, wants to live up to his father. And so as a way to hopefully impress him, he's going to torture the son of this family that had done them wrong. And so he, it's awful what he does to Ben, trying to carve his name in his stomach and beats the rest of them up. And in the movie, he's like starts a really shitty rumor about Bev. And that
I don't remember that. There wasn't stuff in the book about Bev being some kind of slutty girl or something.
It made sense.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense of like how you find a weakness or something. But that was So I was always puzzled when you initially said like, "Oh, there's a slutty girl." I'm like, as I'm getting to know Bev in the book, I'm like, I don't get this. But anyway, we can get back to that. But
so anyways, Mike continually gets cornered by Henry Bowers, as the rest of them do. And it culminates to this really bad altercation where there's Henry Bowers and his cronies, and they're going to really do some damage to Mike. And the Losers Club happens to stumble upon them, which happens to be in the quarry, in the rock quarry. And to get their attention off of Mike, they chuck a rock and hit Henry Bowers with it. And that starts a rock fight.
Yeah. So basically, same as like Ben came into their lives, like running for his life, Mike does so as well, and they instantly accept him and they defend him with this rock
and defend and protect him, and they have this rock fight, and the Losers Club wins. Only as long as it takes them to realize now they're all like Henry Bowers is like really going to come after them now.
Yeah.
If they thought it was bad before, like it's really going to be bad because they stood up to him.
And now they're 7, which is this kind of, as we've talked about, there are certain numbers that are funny, but also powerful. That's evidently a powerful number in this book. And, and so now that we've introduced kind of everybody, all the main characters, we can talk freely, just fucking all over the place, hopefully. But for me, that rock fight, so all of these things are iconic moments in the book as these characters come together that you come to know and love so well. In the film, when the rock war started, I just started gently like just weeping, like crying, and that didn't stop for a while.
Yeah.
Like I was not expecting anything like that from a movie like this, but I was so fresh to spending so much time with these characters that it was just so moving. Like that whole thing where to see these characters that I heard about brought to life. And one of the things I appreciate about the movie is like, other than the kid from Stranger Things with the amazing name, like there aren't really people you recognize.
Right.
So you can just sort of, especially if you're bringing to life a book and you weren't necessarily picturing actual people or actors or whatever. It worked really well for me, at least. And, excuse me.
Yeah, because even in the few adults that they do show in the movie, none of them are recognizable actors.
Yeah, I felt like they really took a kind of Charlie Brown approach to the adults. Like they're almost like not there. Like they needed to focus on the kids.
Yeah, and did you feel like the pharmacist and Eddie Kasprak's mom, those were really bad costumes? I felt like they were almost they almost looked like they were in a costume. The costumes were so bad. Like she was obviously in a fat suit. She wasn't actually that fat. And like the pharmacist was like obviously wearing a wig, it looked like to me.
I didn't quite notice that, but I'd like you to talk a little bit more about this idea, because I hadn't thought of it. But now that you mention it, thinking even back to the book, I think you're right about the adult. So I think that's what you're going towards with these two characters and how it is kind of like inhabiting these adults.
Yep.
Is that what you're going for? So maybe to say more about that.
Well, kind of. I don't think he's influencing them. I don't think he inhabits anybody. Like the people that we see turn into Pennywise, like the woman in the book who is quote unquote like Bob Gray's daughter, or which is Bob Gray is Pennywise, like his, and she's ultimately Pennywise. Like all of those adults or all those grown up people that end up becoming Pennywise were always just Pennywise putting on a different set piece. Right. But there's in the book, there's like the scene on the kissing bridge when, the car passes and Ben thinks that he's finally going to get saved. And
before the car
just keeps before they carve anything into him, but the car just keeps driving by. Bevy is running for her life from her father, and like from somebody in the book.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure which.
And she sees like an adult on their front porch, and just as she's about to ask for help from this adult, the adult gets up off the chair that they're sitting on and turns their back to them and like goes into the house. And there's some of that in the movie. They do that in the movie too. They do definitely the car passing on Kissing Bridge.
Yeah.
And it just looks past them. And in the movie, it's a little more heavy handed because as that car passes, you see a balloon pop up in the rear window.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's implied and it's confirmed that like Pennywise, he doesn't like hunting adults because their fears are harder to articulate. But he can influence anybody, and so he essentially, the whole thing with the fear is he calls it salting the meat or seasoning the meat. It's the fear, like he's a psychological vampire essentially. Like he's not even physically eating in the book too. Like he's not physically eating these kids. He's eating their essence. Like they're in. The fear gives them this good flavor that it likes. And so
he does take Georgie's arm off though, right?
He does take Georgie's arm off, but think back in the book when they're talking about the Andrew Mellon, when he murders Andrew Mellon, the homosexual.
Oh, in the more present day thing that kicks it off, yeah.
Yeah, and the eyewitnesses that do remember seeing the clown there, one of them said they saw the clown like biting him. The other one said that they saw the clown looking at him, and like. So I don't think. He took Georgie's arm off. I think in the movie, he eats them. Like he eats their physical body and their psychological stuff.
Yeah.
But in the book, he doesn't care about any of that. He just wants to absorb them into the deadlights, which is really what he is. Like that is
yeah. Yes, the deadlights. Yeah.
Yeah. But he has this influence on the adults. Derry is his hunting grounds, and he has full control over them. He literally influenced the creation of the town to do this. Like you find out, it's fascinating. Really, really I mean, the ultimate bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's all the bad guys. I eventually, once I did, see the movie and finish the book, saw the movie and stuff, I looked into some of the Stephen King like YouTube clips, and one thing was he was talking about so if you look in the back of the book, it says this book was begun in Bangor, Maine on September 9th, 1981, and completed in Bangor, Maine on December 28th, 1985. Excuse me. So it was written over
4 years is a long time for Stephen King to write a book.
Yeah. I mean, that's par for the course for me, for creative endeavors, but for Stephen King, that's a long time. But so he was saying he wanted to write a book with all the monsters, he said. And so he was trying to find a way to do that. And so that's what's pretty interesting with this character of Pennywise is that and it actually is very suitable for me as well, because taking place in the 50s, that was when Stephen King was a kid. And it was also when like the movies that I'm so fond of from being a kid, from some revival Frankendrack in the late 80s, where they were seizing upon this thing that happened in the 50s when monster movies from the Universal and stuff were released to television at a discounted rate, so they were all over the place. So what these kids see, like the movie that Richie invites Bev to, is I Was a Teenage Werewolf with Michael Landon. And so when Richie sees it, it manifests itself as that teenage werewolf. Another one of the kids sees The Mummy. And I think one of Henry Bauer's crew, when he gets decapitated, he sees the Frankenstein monster. So again, like Stephen King saying, this
and
opportunity,
the creature from the Black Lagoon gets a
So it's kind of fun for now. They haven't translated that in the modern adaptation because there aren't. But there are
allusions. There's nods to those.
Oh, yeah.
So
or maybe I missed some of those.
So in the scene that's taking place in Neibold Street,
that house.
When when it is confronting the whole group, it's like Eddie's there and his arm's broken, and then the rest of the crew comes in and they're all together. There's this shot where you see Pennywise's hand like come down and it grows and bursts out of the glove.
Oh yeah. Oh,
that's a werewolf. That's werewolf
right.
hand.
Yes.
That's a werewolf hand. And then later on in the sewer, in the big confrontation, when they're fighting him, when it's Ben's turn to fight him, because they all kind of take a swing at him, which I love how they did that more than how they did it in the book. Because in the book, just Bill fights him, really. But in the movie, it takes all of them to fight him and win. But when it's Ben's turn to stand up and take a swing, Pennywise gets a hit in on all of them too while they're getting a hit. And he like wraps, it's mummy wrap, but it wraps Ben up and he's holding him in it. And you see it's like a skeleton face and it like screams at Ben. Yeah. That's the mummy.
Right. Yeah.
So there's nods to those in there. God damn, is this such a fucking great story.
I know.
God, is it so good.